Good morning, Dolphins fans. Welcome to another episode here of On the Fin Side with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, as well as the Fansided Network and FinFanatic.com. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic _pick on Twitter. We're, about 3 weeks away from free agency, as well as now just looking at the calendar, about 9 weeks away from the NFL draft. So we're gonna start bringing the content here 1 to 2 times a week. Be sure to join us for that. Today, we're going to talk about the Dolphins' recent coaching hires here, as well as a handful of players, actually more than a handful, that could be cut here this offseason. The Dolphins are scheduled, according to overthecap.com, to have $63.8 million in cap room, and that could get up to 80 or 90 million, depending on who they decide to part ways with. And we're going to go through those guys. We're going to have a yes or no, and do they stay or do they go? But Paul, before we get into that, it seems like forever since we had our show last week. The Dolphins didn't even have an offensive coordinator yet. They hired Frank Smith, the Chargers offensive line and running coordinator, previously the Raiders tight end coach. And they also hired Darrell Bevell as quarterback coach and passing game coordinator, Matt Applebaum, Boston College's offensive line coach, to man the offensive line. Jean-Pierre is actually going to be the assistant offensive line coach now, so that's kind of a middle finger to Brian Flores. And Sam Madison and Patrick Surtain are back in the building as cornerbacks coach. Sam Madison leading that charge, Patrick Surtain as an assistant. So what do you make of these coaching hires?
I love it. For me, all of our listeners know I've wanted teachers in the building. I've wanted innovators in the building. I've wanted them to play aggressively and make it fun. And everything with this coaching staff screams play aggressively, screams teaching, and screams innovation. And we've complained about the cornerbacks playing off for years, on and off with this recent coaching staff. But overall, it's a scenario that we've complained about that. And the thing I love about Sam Madison is if you go back and you watch Madison Avenue where he had Xavier Howard on and they were driving around talking, Sam and Xavier were talking so much about coming up and playing press. So I expect to see a lot more press man coverage, which, God, that is so in the sweet spot for guys like Byron Jones and Xavier Howard that it's something I'm really excited for. And you look at these guys, these coaches are the ones that those star players we all love watching. Darren Waller, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk. You can run down a list here. They're the first person these people want to call when they do something good when they're not around. They're the first person these guys beam about. I've never seen a set of coaching hires where you see the all-pros from the other teams come out and go, dude, you guys got a great one. Holy crap. I wish, it's, I can't say enough good in that regard.
Yeah, and that's a good point is when you look at, it's one thing to be during an interview to be asked, and then obviously you're going to say good things about your previous coach, or at least 99% of the time you are. They're doing this unprovoked, and you look at, for example, Frank Smith, the Dolphins' new offensive coordinator. He's not going to call plays. Mike McDaniel will do that, but is going to be McDaniel's right-hand man there on offense. Darren Waller said that he texts him more than he texts his friends. He was the tight ends coach from 2018 to 2020, and you can plainly see that with Darren Waller. Darren Waller was an alcoholic. He was an underachiever at Georgia Tech. He was a 6th-round pick, a wide receiver out of Georgia Tech by the Ravens, a practice squad guy, barely caught any passes. And then in 2018 and 2019, he had back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons with the Raiders. And the only reason he didn't have another 1,000-yard season is because he got hurt this year. So, man, oh, man, that's I'm excited about that. And also, passing game coordinator Darrell Bevell. Now, you can look at this in two ways. The pessimist is going to say, well, let's look at the last 2 years. He, was with the Lions and the Jaguars. Why couldn't he get the things fixed there on those offenses? He was actually interim head coach 2 years in a row for the Lions and for the Jaguars. Very rarely does that happen. But you look before that, he was the Packers quarterback coach from 03 to 05. He was also the Vikings quarterback coach during Brett Favre's best year in a decade with the Vikings in 09 when they almost went to the Super Bowl. And then he was with Russell Wilson for 7 years when he was playing, obviously, his best football. So Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, a decade worth of experience as their quarterback coach looks pretty good on your resume. And I think that's speaks well about what Tua is going to be surrounded with.
Yeah, no, it's God, it's so refreshing and relieving to see these coaches. I mean, it's you can go out and watch hype video all day, but it's I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's one thing to say things in a press conference, because I'll go back to the Mike McDaniel press conferences where he talked about being a teacher, where he talked about you show these players the value you add for them to their careers. And I'm paraphrasing when I say that. We're seeing the evidence already. We're seeing it with like that story you said about Darren Waller. We're seeing it with Kittle and Juszczyk. We're seeing it with all these players coming out of the woodwork. The fact that Deebo Samuel made a call during the interview process and was like, if you don't hire Mike McDaniel, you're an idiot. It's refreshing to me that it feels like we suddenly have a functional organization if we can get the right bodies in the building to play along.
Right. And wait, we've gotten excited about coaching staffs and coaching candidates before. I do get the feeling this is a little different, though, because again, you look at Mike McDaniel and what he's done the last 4 years with the Niners. The offense plays well above its talent level. George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Deebo Samuel, rave about the guy. You look at Frank Smith, Darren Waller, raves about the guy. That was Frank Smith's number one guy from 2018 to 2020 with the Raiders as tight end coach. He goes to the Chargers last year as the offensive line coach and running game coordinator and works with Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler has almost 1,600 total yards last year and 20 touchdowns. So the lead guy over the last several years that Frank Smith has worked with raves about him, and clearly they're playing well above what they've ever done before. And then,
go ahead.
Yeah, no. And then, Darrell Bevell, you can take the last couple of years and say, well, he was not a great offensive coordinator, but was that really play calling in Jacksonville? That was the problem. And Darrell Bevell is not going to be a play caller. He's going to be a quarterback coach, which if you look at his resume is pretty darn impressive.
It absolutely is. And before I get to my next point, I just got to say, thanks, Shake. I love you. Rejoice, Cat. We have a fullback. It's from Shake Money. Just says.
Gosh. Yes, John. Love it, which is odd because I hate it. No. Look, it's different with fullback. This year, I mean, I still don't think fullbacks are anything. I mean, I think you could put any idiot at fullback, but the Dolphins are going to have a fullback this year, whereas Brian Flores' team didn't. That was the big thing. I mean, they rarely use two running backs in the backfield, if ever. They were I think they did like 4% of the time last year. So, yeah, I mean, this is different. They're going to use a fullback, and Levitt's the first guy in the building. They also signed River Craycraft, a wide receiver. He played with McDaniel and with the 49ers. Prior to that, with the Broncos, has only caught 7 NFL passes. One of them was for a 40-yarder, but looks more like a training camp body, somebody who knows the system. But, yeah, the Dolphins have a fullback in the building.
Yeah, and it's – God, I can't wait. We've still got Ethan Carter on the roster. And
for now.
Hopefully for now. And hopefully in the draft we get my guy, Chigagonkwu, and convert him to tight end or to fullback.
Okay, yeah, that's yeah. And Patrick Ricard is also going to be a free agent too. The Ravens, he's multiple-time Pro Bowler. We'll see if he hits the market. I mean, if you're going to get a fullback and use him, you better get one of the best ones. And besides Juszczyk, who's pretty entrenched there with the 49ers. Ricard is probably the best one in the NFL after that, because there aren't a lot of teams that use fullbacks.
We could go with a power I and put 2 fullbacks in front of our tailback.
Oh God. Spent 3 minutes now on fullbacks. This is
We're going to spend a lot of minutes this offseason on fullbacks.
Spiraling out of control. But going back to the coaches here, Matt Applebaum, you're really going to see with him that zone blocking scheme. That's the biggest thing to keep in mind when looking at the offensive linemen that the Dolphins target in free agency in the draft this year, is that everything under Brian Flores was big, giant, 6'5", 340-pound offensive linemen, man blocking scheme. With Matt Applebaum and with Mike McDaniel, they're going to be really prioritizing zone, flexibility, fluidity, mobility inside. So that's going to make it really interesting. It's going to give an opportunity to players like Austin Jackson, like Liam Eichenberg, like Michael Dieter on the inside, who are young, who can move. Now, another thing I say too is, and I tweeted this here yesterday, is with the 49ers, it's not like they had Pro Bowlers from left tackle to right tackle. I mean, at guard, they had a bunch of nobodies. I mean, you look at the players that started for them: Dan Brunskill, Brandon Fusco, Mike Person, who actually was signed as a Dolphins offensive assistant here this past week. These guys started. Brunskill started 40 games. Mike Person started 30 for them. These are nobodies. These are guys that never had a starting role, and they were inserted into the lineup, some because of injury, and the 49ers offense kept plugging along, averaging that 5 yards a carry.
Yeah, and if you look, I want to go back to Matt Applebaum for a minute. I mean, it feels like every year we're talking about a couple of linemen from BC when we do our draft coverage. Every single year. And not every school has that. And that's a credit to Applebaum in a lot of ways, the way that he's been able to coach these guys up and have them come be NFL caliber players. The interesting thing with that as well is Hunter Long played up there, and granted he's a tight end, but I'm sure Applebaum's familiar with Hunter Long's ability to block. So we might see a scenario where we get a little bit more out of guys like Hunter Long, as well as keep an eye on BC offensive linemen in the draft, because if Applebaum truly believes in them, they may be a target a little earlier than some projections have them go.
Right, and Zion Johnson is somebody you see mocked to the Dolphins a lot. I definitely love him, I could say that. Mm-hmm. And he can play center or guard. And yeah, we'll see on that. Also, Alec Lindstrom from Boston College should be a mid to late round pick as a center as well. So there are going to be at least two Boston College offensive linemen drafted. We'll see really what Applebaum and what the Dolphins organization thinks of them. So staying with the design of the offense, Paul, right now, gun to your head, is Mikasiki back next year?
Yes.
I'm going to say yes, too.
He may not be. He may be even less of a true tight end next year. Now, there's two factors on this front as well. And blocking on Twitter jokes aside, which, welcome to the club, Cat, by the way. Mike Gesicki last year did improve his blocking. There was the effort there. There were times where you saw him occasionally have a key block that opened a lane for somebody. It wasn't always pretty, but the willingness is there. And one thing, and I was glad to see, I think Jason Sarney tweeted this out as well, that we've been saying for a while is, if you stop thinking of Mike Gesicki as a tight end, he's absolutely special. And you don't have to factor in the franchise tag stuff if you're able to re-sign the guy, so you don't have to fight over whether he's a tight end or a wide receiver. If you make him truly a wide receiver that you occasionally line up to block from, a tight slot or something like that, all the arguments against Mike Gesicki go away.
Well,
and
yeah,
and mismatch weapon for somebody that likes designing different systems to accentuate the strengths of a mismatch weapon.
Right. Yeah, it's when I look at Mike McDaniel's offense last year with the 49ers, and I'll keep saying this over and over again until we get to free agency and we talk about Gesicki more directly, is last year, George Kittle lined up in line on 750 snaps. Okay. Mike Gesicki was 99. So there's that. And this offense is built around the run. And that doesn't fit Mike Gesicki very well. But the other side of that is we're not necessarily bringing Mike McDaniel in here to bring the exact 49ers offense. The strength of him is his, as he said in his press conference, is his ability to adapt. And if you start out by looking at Mike Gesicki and the skill set that he brings to the table and saying, no, I can't work with him, there's some inconsistency there. So that's the reason I do think Gesicki is going to be back. If he's franchised as a tight end, he'd get 10 or 11 million. If he's a receiver, you're looking more at about 17 million. But like you said, if you can get a contract with him, let's say 5 years, 60 million, I think he's going to cost a little more actually. Then you keep him in long-term and then you can figure out what to do with him from there.
Yeah, I think he's going to be 13, 14 million a year at the end of the day. And if you think of him so if you put, one of these 6-foot corners against him, he's going to eat all day. And so if you're splitting him wide, you're automatically forcing it. He is the best tool Miami has to force defenses into weird and different coverages and move people off their spots, which is something that if you watch the Baldy's breakdown, which I know you have, about Mike McDaniel out in San Francisco, his whole offense isn't, we need a Deebo Samuel to be here. We need a Kyle Juszczyk to be here. It's putting the different players off their spot on a defense, making them uncomfortable, making them hesitate, make them take themselves out of position, and setting yourself up to win matchups. So Mike Gesicki is one of the best weapons that they have for setting up defenses to do what they don't want to do and making them uncomfortable before they even snap the ball.
Right. Yeah. He shows certainly a lot of different looks from play to play and from week to week. I will say, too, that if Gesicki is back, especially long-term, I think Devontae Parker will be traded. And probably not for much, because you're not going to cut Devontae Parker because it'd be senseless to. I'd rather have him on the roster as a 4th or 5th receiver because if you cut him before June 1st, you're saving just a few $1 million. If you cut him after June 1st, you're saving $6 million. I would pay $6 million to have him as the 4th receiver playing 30 snaps a game. But I also think, too, that regardless of the looks Mike McDaniel gives on offense, one constant theme is creating spacing. And I don't know if you can do that with Gesicki and Parker as 2 of your top 3 options, along with Jalen Waddle. So I think you're going to see some change here in the receiving unit because this offense prioritizes spacing and yards after the catch, 2 things that Gesicki and Parker don't really bring. So we'll see. I don't think you probably get more than a 4th rounder for him. I don't know.
Gesicki brings yards after the catch a lot more than Devontae Parker does.
Gesicki?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think Gesicki has 3 broken tackles in his career, and I'm not exaggerating.
Oh, no, I'm with you on that. But we've seen a lot more scenarios where Gesicki manages to get open and catch the ball and take off with it. Yeah, broken tackles, not a lot.
Yards after, okay, I'll amend that to say yards after contact.
Yeah, yards after contact is a lot different than yards after catch.
Gotcha.
And Gesicki's mismatch ability puts him in those scenarios where he's able to. Devontae Parker, his strengths are, he's basically a more athletic appearing Oronde Gadsden, where he's going to catch the ball if it's near him. He's probably going to have 2 guys draped off of him and around him, but he's going to snatch the ball. Gesicki's going to do that, but he's also, if he catches the ball, going to take off on you instead of just, falling where he lies.
Right. Yeah. That's a big difference there. So I learned my lesson there. Also, too, before we get to, I'll talk about Sam Madison for a second. But Darrell Bevell, Paul, was UConn's wide receiver coach in 1998 and 1999. I don't know if you know that or not.
I do. I remember that. It's, yeah, it's been a little while, but it's
He's had a long career, and I mean, he's almost, I mean, 20 years in the NFL. I mean, working with three different Hall of Famers. So I'm really excited to see Daryl Bevel work with Tua Tagovailoa. But going back to Sam Madison, and I'll tell you what, Sam Madison is one of my favorite Dolphins of all time, and I think there can be this nostalgia of bringing back Sam Madison, Patrick Surtain. That's really cool. But for me, it goes further than that. I'm surprised they were able to get Sam Madison, because you look at what the Chiefs have done over the last 3 years at the cornerback spot. Yeah, I know they're known for offense, obviously, but they have put so few resources at the cornerback position. Like L'Jarius Sneed was a converted safety, 4th-round pick out of Louisiana Tech, has started 30 some odd games for them. Chervarius Ward, an undrafted free agent, coached up. Rashad Fenton, a 6th-round pick out of South Carolina. They haven't spent a high amount of resources at the cornerback position. And to coach them up to this level where they're just good players, again, you're talking about taking players, and it's a theme with this coaching staff and these hires, taking these players and having them play above their talent level. That's what they're looking for. So not only is it cool to have Madison and Surtain back in the building, but for the last 3 years, he's been able to coach the most out of these players too.
He has, and it's funny. Somebody had put a comment out yesterday about Charles Burks deciding to leave, and I sat back and thought about it. And Charles Burks left coaching Xavier Howard, Byron Jones, Nick Needham, Justin Coleman, all those guys, to go try to coach up Eli Apple.
Well, Apple's yes, but I guess I'm splitting hairs. Eli Apple's a free agent, but
he's still league year hasn't started yet.
That poor guy, man. Like he's come all the way back to
being Eli Apple,
being a good player, and in the Super Bowl he couldn't cover Cooper Kupp. Nobody could cover Cooper Kupp this year. Right. Nobody tried to, which was really weird. And
Jalen Ramsey blew coverage just as much. Just his team won.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm getting off the beaten path on that. But no, and if this sounds like if this sounds like a Dolphins fanboy show so far because of the coaching hires, listen, if I set from my end at least, I can't speak for Paul, but from my end, I set very clear expectations for the Dolphins coaching search. I said, if you don't get one of your 4 clearly identified candidates, which were Mike McDaniel, Brian Dable, Kellen Moore, actually those three. If you didn't get one of those guys because of the organizational structure and because of what's being said by Brian Flores and other people in the media, then you failed. And as a result, you're going to have to go back to Vance Joseph. You're going to be playing a zone-heavy scheme that doesn't fit the personnel, and it's going to be a train wreck. And this would be a really angry show, at least from my point of view, if they had found themselves in that position. But they didn't. They got Mike McDaniel. They got one of, if not the top guy on their list. So that's why hiring McDaniel and surrounding him with these coaches is a big deal.
And for me, if McDaniel had been 10th on their list and they went 1 through 9 and got the nope, sorry, nope, sorry, nope, sorry, and finally went, I guess we got to hire this McDaniel guy, I'd be in the same place right now. And that's because everything on my list that I've wanted in a coach, at least on paper right now, and in a coaching staff, at least on paper right now, we're just sitting there checking these boxes. Finally, we've gotten our top guy before. And we've sat here and basically said, well, I hope it works. Cam Cameron. Not for nothing, Flores. Like, he didn't get us there. Everything else aside, he didn't get us there. And I saw the innovation with the defense. I saw us get away from the innovation with the defense and then suddenly go back to the innovation with the defense. Whoever did that. And it's, you look back at, like, Gase. Like, this is a staff that has shown the innovation, shown the brilliance. Coaches that are well respected have deferred to Mike McDaniel in so many different ways. And the staff that he's building with Welker, somebody that's ridiculously admired. He's got a staff right now of a ton of guys that have been earmarked early on in their careers as next great football minds.
And as far as creating spacing and getting open, nobody knows that better than Wes Welker. And he took two guys, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who aren't known for creating spacing. They're more big-bodied receivers, and was able to do that with them and coach them up. So I'm excited about this coaching staff overall. But Paul, let's get into our second part here, where we are going to look at
real quick. I just want to answer I want to answer a quick question in chat. Scummy asked if McDaniel has as much pull as Flo with the talent player acquisitions. Chris Grier has shown that he's going to go. If Mike McDaniel says, I need this or I need that to be able to coach, Chris Grier has shown that he's going to try to get this or that, even if it's not a player that he would normally select or try to sign. So if McDaniel says, I need this, that's the one scenario where I would say Grier would need to be walked out of the building. If Grier's sitting there saying, nope, I'm going to give you something else and you play with it the way I tell you to.
Right. And the funniest rumor I hear going around is that Brian Flores wanted Justin Herbert. That's a lie. I've been told by 3 people in the know that is not true. And I'm not saying he pounded on the table for Tua, but there is no way that Chris Grier locked Brian Flores in the closet and say, no, this is your quarterback. That is not Chris Grier. Chris Grier is not a tyrant. He is going to get the players, right or wrong, that the coach wants. And he has the final blessing over it. That's it. And anything else that's said is a lie. It's that simple. Now, you can love or hate that, but that's the truth. And that's why I thought that Grier, at the time I said this, Grier is not worth preserving, because if he's going to prevent you from hiring the coach that you want, it's not worth it. Well, the Dolphins hired the coach they want. So I'm fine with Grier staying now, even though I'm not singing his praises until this roster gets up to a championship caliber roster. A lot of Bobby McCain talk in the chat too, Paul. I see he is a free agent this year, and you want to bring him back for a few million, play slot corner, maybe take Justin Coleman's spot or have him be the third or fourth safety. Fine with me.
And actually, that's one other thought too. Just, I know we're not going to dive deep into this. These players coming out, well-respected players around the league, all pros, guys that have been turned into all pros, coming out on behalf of Flores and Smith and the rest of this coaching staff is going to absolutely help with free agency coming up. And it's a scenario that, if you hear, this guy turned me into an all-pro. This guy fixed my life and turned me into an all-pro. This guy, who are you FaceTiming over there at the Pro Bowl? Oh, Mike McDaniel, even though he's not my coach anymore. Like, all these things, players see that, and it can serve as a tiebreaker at times for, you know what, I want to go play for this dude. I'm hitting the peak of my career, maybe even if it's a short-term contract, so I can get paid later. Like, it's people are going to want to play for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very encouraging to see what the Dolphins have done on their coaching staff so far. And let's take a look here at the upcoming weeks, because the Dolphins have some decisions to make. And this part of the show, we're going to go through a few players here. We've looked at the salary cap numbers, and we have a list of 9 players we're going to say yes or no on, and what the Dolphins can save by cutting them. So, Paul, let's start at the top of the list. And before we do that, again, reminder, the Dolphins are scheduled to have about $64 million in cap room, the most in the NFL. And they can get that number up to somewhere between 80 and 100 million, depending on what they do. And the whole purpose of bringing in Mike McDaniel and keeping Josh Boyer is because the Dolphins, right or wrong, feel that they're close and that they can take that next step up with a different coach, more communication, more cohesiveness. So let's start at the top. Eric Rowe. So his cap number is 5.08 million. Well, actually, I'll spare everyone the details. Eric Rowe, the Dolphins can save 4.55 million by cutting him. Yes or no?
Keep him.
I'm keeping him too. And because very simply, I mean, if you cut Eric Rowe to save $4.5 million, you're going to be looking for a third safety who's a veteran, who you're probably going to pay $4 or $5 million. I mean, someone like Duron Harmon is a free agent. the
Or
former
Bobby McCain.
Patriot. Or Bobby McCain. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And I would take, for what the Dolphins do, I would take Rowe over McCain. But I wouldn't mind having McCain back in the fold for a few million if he's up for that. So yes, I'm keeping Eric Rowe too. Next, Adam Butler, 4.15 million. And okay, you're keeping him?
Yeah, he the way he developed in this defense over the course of last season, he turned himself into a key cog of this defense and that defensive line rotation. I don't want to screw up the defensive line moving forward.
I was really back and forth on Butler. I decided to keep as well. And he brings something different than the other defensive tackles. I mean, Raekwon Davis and Zach Sealer are very clearly push the pocket type of pass rushers. Sealer brings a little more, I'm not going to say twitchiness, but a little more ability to get into the backfield than Davis does, obviously. Christian Wilkins can get in the backfield, but Butler is just kind of your, when the Dolphins have a lead, pin your ears back and get to the quarterback type of defensive tackle. He only had 2 sacks on the year, but he was a problem when the Dolphins had those leads and they were able to more send three players to the quarterback and still create some pressure. So I was really close on Butler, but I decided to keep him as well. So Rowe and Butler we're keeping. Jesse Davis is a cut for me, saving $3.6 million. Yeah, I'm number one. I don't think he fits any scheme, but he definitely doesn't fit this one. That demands flexibility and mobility out of tackle or guard. If Flores had returned and you said, okay, we're kicking Jesse Davis into left guard to compete and be the swing man, I could have stomached that, but it's a flat no now.
Yeah, I've had the thought, and Jesse Davis may not be a quick cut. He may be one that they cut possibly even after the draft. If, because of his positional flexibility, I wouldn't keep him though. He's somebody that just, I seeing that C on his chest still pisses me off.
Yeah, I'm with you there. The next two we can just blow through. Clayton Fedulum saved $2.78 million, and Alan Hearns saved $2.58 million.
Can we cut Fedulum retroactively?
I don't even know what that word means. So
that means go in and go, look, we're cutting you all the way back to like 2019, so you owe us $1 million.
Oh, you owe us some of that 2020 money. Yeah. Clayton. Well, same could be said for Alan Hearns. I mean,
I'm good with that too. Like retroactively, just go back to the point we signed him and go like the after credit scene from the first Deadpool. Just go back and fix those mistakes. So, Fedulum, has way more of a chance to stay than Hearns, because he's arguably the Dolphins' top special teams player, but at almost $3 million on a special teams unit that coverage wise was just okay last year. I mean, I wasn't a huge fan of keeping Danny Crossman as special teams coach, but I think Fedulum has a 50-50 chance to stay, but I know on this show. You want to know how in I am on Fedulum getting cut? Like, if that wasn't his name, that would be his nickname for me, because that's the freaking noise I make every time someone says his name or I see him walk on the field. Like, Fedulum. Like, it's just
Yeah, it's something your granddad mumbles under his breath when you didn't close the door.
Yeah, in lieu of swearing.
All right, now here's an interesting one. Myles Gaskin, you could save $2.54 million by cutting him.
Keep him for now, because I think Gaskin actually has the possibility of thriving when called upon within a McDaniel offense.
I completely disagree, and that's why I'm cutting him on this. In this scheme, you have to be able to stretch horizontally, plant your foot, and have the vision and the burst to burst upfield. Gaskin doesn't have that. I mean, he is a good receiver, but that's it. And when you take a look at the 49ers running backs, they like to rotate a lot, and you have to have the ability to do what I just said. And I don't think Gaskin has any of that ability. So to me, he gets the axe.
You almost said to see the Fedulum hole and get up the Fedulum field. with Gaskin. I'm okay with cutting him. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'd give him a shot.
Ethan Carter.
Ethan Carter, I would not give a shot.
Well, now you're if you cut Fedgelum, you cut Ethan Carter, you're cutting two of your core special teams players. So
we got like 18 core special teams players. I'm good.
Not as much. These are the guys who play. I've got to check the numbers, but they play. I know Fedgelum plays just about every snap, and Carter plays most of them. So,
and what does that say? That Fedgelum's in every coverage snap, and you never hear his name except when he comes in at safety.
Yeah, that's true. I'd cut Ethan Carter too. I'm just pointing that out. But you cut Ethan Carter, you cut Clayton Fedgelum, you save $5 million. I think that's certainly worth it.
What's the quote I'm looking for? I said, "Good day, sir." Yeah, there we go.
So, and I want to point out too that after day one of free agency last year, the Dolphins came away with 3 players: Jacoby Brissett, Malcolm Brown, and Ethan Carter. And people say, "Oh, well, that's good value. That's good depth." No, and I said, in what world does it make sense to spend $10 million on those 3 guys instead of getting a higher level starter at a need position? How does that make sense? And I hope Chris Greer learns that here this offseason. Get 2 or 3 big pieces that change things. Do not develop quality depth. That's for your coach to do. Well, if your coach can't develop quality depth, fire him. And I think Mike McDaniel can do that. So stop signing depth. Losers sign depth. Winners sign stars. Sign the stars.
Sign the offensive tackles.
Yes. Yeah, please. 2 of them, if you can.
Sign 2 Fedgeluming offensive tackles.
At least you've got to come out of free agency, and it's not a great free agent group, but it's really good at offensive line. At both tackle and guard. So the Dolphins should be able to do that. Ethan Carter.
Cut him again.
Adam Shaheen, save $1.85 million.
Unfortunately, right now, I don't think you can unless you bring back Durham Smythe.
Yeah, I keep Shaheen. I was disappointed that he didn't get on the field more. I really thought this was one of the more underutilized players last year. I know he missed a few games. I know he's not a special teams guy, but I think he does have ability. That's certainly worth $1.85 million for me. And then finally, Greg Little, 1.54.
1.54. I'd give him a shot to try to keep a backup role, but I'm going to be honest. I could care.
Yeah, I debated putting him on the list. I kept him too. I think he's at least worth a look.
For $1.5 million, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So overall, the ones we agreed on, we're cutting Jesse Davis, $3.6 million savings, Clayton Fedgelum, $2.78 million, Alan Hearns, 2.58, Myles Gaskin, 2.54. Well, you were leaning toward keeping Gaskin, but let's cut him.
I'm okay either way on Gaskin.
Okay. Ethan Carter, 2.53. So we tally all that up, and you add that to the Dolphins cap room that they've got projected. You're talking about $78 million in cap room this offseason. You have 28 free agents with 2 big ones in Gesicki and Agba. But other than Gesicki and Agba and a handful of other guys that we'll talk about next week, if you say it like this, let's say Agba and Gesicki combined, you're spending $27 million. And then the draft class, even on the high end, another $10 million. So 78 minus 38
gives you about $40 million to play with.
So yes, about $40 million there. So that'll allow the Dolphins to go out and sign, if they do things correctly, 3 really good players in free agency.
No, it's. You look at the top 3 offensive tackles, they're going to probably get somewhere between, or left tackles, they're going to get probably somewhere between 17 to 23 million based on the value for left tackles right now. And then if you're able to sign one of those guys from like 5 to 8 on the offensive tackle list, they're probably going to be around that 12 million rate, and then you've still got the ability to play in other areas.
Absolutely. So, Paul, anything else jump out from the chat here today before we call it a day?
Not a, people are excited. We're not going to have a lot of Patriots retreads anymore. I'm with you on that. The Bobby McCain talk we already talked about. I don't know. I think we're in good shape. But guys, make sure you guys make sure you guys subscribe, turn your notifications on. We're here almost every Saturday morning. If any news breaks, it's important. We're gonna hop back on. I'm super excited about Sam Madison, Pat Surtain. You brought up with Wes Welker the fact that what he was able to do to get open. Could you imagine if Wes Welker had the physical gifts that someone like Jalen Waddle does? And I'm really hopeful for what Welker can do with him, as well as some of the other folks in the receiver room. And
right.
that may be something that helps some of these guys that we're not thinking about right now as well. So there's a lot to like, and I think we're going to have one or two young wide receivers to work on with Welker. I'm hopeful that they're able to see something in Kirk Merritt. I know he got to be kind of a folk hero.
No, Kirk Merritt's gone.
Is he? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, that was a lot quieter than I thought. I barely caught that a couple weeks ago, but I understand what you're saying. Lynn Bowden's one that looks like a good fit. I mean, I'm interested to see how he does. And I think that I really think the Dolphins have missed out on drafting those receivers in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round over the last couple of years that can separate. I mean, talk about guys like, Deontay Johnson or Darnell Mooney. I'm handpicking there, but just guys who are drafted there because they're not the biggest, they're not the fastest, but they can separate. That's what you're looking for in the middle rounds. And we're going to talk
like a Malcolm Perry.
Where is he now? He's on someone's practice squad. I think he's with the Ravens.
I wouldn't be surprised if Miami tries to steal him back just so McDaniel can see what he can do with a switchblade player like that. I mean, I know we got to get off the air here, but it's one of the reasons why I've reset a lot of my draft stuff that I know we're going to be talking about coming up. And I'm looking at guys like James Cook out of Georgia, guys like Chigangankwu to be a fullback, because you can have the same personnel on the field for just about any formation, because Ogankwu can kick out to that slot tight end and be an absolute receiving threat. Cook's almost a better wide receiver than he is a running back, and he's a damn good running back with good vision that can make those one-step cuts like you were talking about. And it's, looking at the pieces like that in terms of like, those are guys that may wash out in some ways in other places, but if they're put in the right scenarios and right situations with the right coaching, could thrive and dominate and be something that gives defensive coordinators fits. And that's a tribute to what this coaching staff is and what this coaching staff is building and should be, and why we're so excited here on this show. As far as that goes.
So a few quick hits here. Let's see, from Daniel Harris. Can Wes Welker coach up Devontae Parker? Parker doesn't seem like a Welker type of fit for me, but his whole thing is about creating separation. So I don't know. We'll see. But for Parker just doesn't make a lot of money, and he's able to bring that contested catch asset to the team, which a lot of other receivers don't have on this roster besides he and Gesicki. So we'll see. Someone asked too, Ryan AP, do you want Brandon Jones playing strong safety more so than Eric Rowe? That's interesting because I think Brandon Jones is a great fit as a third safety playing in the box more. Mm-hmm. Blitzing. If you have the ability to get a great strong safety back there, you may, I don't know, take a look at it. Could you get Honey Badger? Could you get Marcus Williams? I don't know. That we'll save that for another day. But that's
good Lord.
Could be
Honey Badger being back there with Brandon Jones and Javon Holland in a 3-safety look. Good Lord.
I actually take that back. Honey Badger, because Honey Badger's better playing in the box and blitzing a lot. But I think who knows. Upgraded punter. We have a lot of punter talk here. We are all in for
Matt Ariza.
Matt Ariza or the Jake Camardia. I will all day draft a punter in the 5th round. Not without batting an eye. I mean, I was in favor of drafting Blake Ferguson in the at 6th round. If he's your long snapper for
Turd
15
Ferguson.
years, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. I mean, if
Did you say Turd Ferguson?
yeah. So anyway, thanks for joining us here this morning. We really appreciate it, everyone, and we're going to have great content and great shows for you heading up over the next couple of weeks. I'm Brian Cat NFL on Twitter. Paul is fanatic_pick. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, all of our social media outlets, finfanatic.com as well, and the Fansided Network. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the Fin side.